tiếng Anh và nói lại theo lời của người nói. Người nói gì? Bạn sẽ nói lại như vậy. Và nói theo họ mà không được bấm nút dừng lại. Những gì họ nói, đó tôi gọi là shadowing, nói đuổi.
Hi, this is AJ Hogue, the director of Effortless English, and today is the last rule, rule number 7. And rule number 7 is very, very powerful. Rule number 7 helps you to speak quickly and to understand instantly, automatically, immediately. This is true fluency, true automatic speaking. So, what is rule number 7? Rule number 7, the last rule, is to use listen and answer mini stories. What are these mini stories, listen and answer, and why are they powerful? Well, first, remember in the past when you went to English school. In school, you probably learned with a lot of listen and repeat. For example, the teacher said, "Repeat after me, class. Hi, how are you?" And the class together, everybody said, "Hi, how are you?" Then the teacher said, "I'm fine, and you?" Then all of the class together said, "I'm fine, and you?" This is listen and repeat. It's an old way to learn English. But it's not powerful. When you listen and repeat, you don't need to think in English. You don't need to think. You just repeat what the teacher said. Maybe you don't understand, but still you repeat. That's an old way, don't do it. Much more powerful is listen and answer. Especially listen and answer mini stories. These are special kind of stories where the teacher asks a story. Now, I did not say tells a story, I said asks a story. The teacher asks a lot of very simple and easy questions. Why? Well, because the student must answer questions constantly answering, hearing a question, answering, hearing a question, answering. This is like real conversation. When you use these listen and answer stories, you teach yourself to understand quickly and to respond quickly, to speak very quickly and automatically. No thinking. That's why these are powerful. You learn to think in English and you learn to speak quickly without thinking, without translating. Now, I will give you a very, very easy and simple example of a question and answer mini story. Just a couple sentences. Now imagine there's a short little story. In the old method, the teacher would say, "Repeat after me." And the teacher says, "There was a boy. He went to the store. He bought a candy bar." And then the students repeat the story. There was a boy. He went to the store. He bought a candy bar. No. In listen and answer stories, the teacher asks the questions. The teacher asks a lot of questions, very easy questions. We use easy questions because we don't want you to think. If I ask a difficult question, then you might stop and think. But if the question is very easy, you can shout an answer. 1 word, 2 words, okay. For example, I would say, "Class, there was a boy." Was there a boy? And you shout, "Yes, yes." Then I say, "Was there a boy or was there a girl?" And you immediately, instantly shout, "A boy, a boy." And I say, "Ah, so there was a boy?" Again, you shout, yes, yes, there was a boy. You say, I see, there was a boy. What was his name? You don't know, so you guess. John or Jim. Anything, you shout an answer. Say, yes, his name was John. Was John a boy or was John a girl? And you shout, a boy, a boy. And then I continue, more questions, more questions. And because you are constantly answering questions, you learn to think in English, you learn to respond, to answer very, very quickly in English. These are very, very powerful. Now, of course, this example is very, very simple, super simple. In my real mini-story lessons, it's more difficult and much more interesting. And there are a lot more questions. And when you use these mini-story lessons, you will learn to speak so much faster, so much more easily and automatically. This is very powerful. So, your rule number 7, absolutely very important. Use, listen, and answer mini stories. Super, super important. Always do this. And of course, you can find a native speaker to make these stories for you. Show them this video, and then they will understand how to do it. Or you can get my lessons. And in fact, that is your next step, because now you are finished. You finished the 7 rules of effortless English. Congratulations. Now you need to use them, and you must use all of them so that you will learn much more quickly, so that you will understand English very quickly, and so that you will speak English easily, quickly, and automatically. So what's your next step? Well, first you want to use all 7 rules. Every time you study English, use all of the 7 rules. One very easy way to use the 7 rules is to get my effortless English lessons. I made these lessons to help you learn English quickly and easily and automatically. And my lessons use all of the 7 rules. I created these lessons using these rules. So they're very, very powerful. To get these lessons, just go to the bottom of the home page. There's a big red button. Click the button to buy the lessons. And you can read all about them on the website. You get more details. Of course, my lessons have vocabulary lessons. We have these mini-story lessons. They're the point of view grammar lessons. And there's also text to help you understand so that you can read and learn new phrases. So these lessons are very, very powerful. I encourage you to get my lessons. Start immediately. Start today. Because when you get the lessons, we send you an email. You click the link. You download the lessons immediately. You get them on your computer immediately. You can start right now today, and I hope you will. Take action. Start learning English correctly. Start speaking English easily, quickly, and automatically. I look forward to having you as my student, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye. Hate, H-A-T-E, hate. And you want to learn this new word. You can, just write down the word hate, and then you find in your dictionary the meaning, and then you memorize it. Hate, 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 hate. That's the old way. That's the kind of textbook way, the school way. Right? In school, you probably remembered a lot of individual words. You had those big vocabulary lists, and you're trying to memorize all of them, trying to remember all these individual, single words. It's not a good way to learn. Much better if you learn a phrase, a group of words. And where do you find these phrases? You find these phrases in the real English podcasts that you're listening to, in the real English storybooks that you're reading. So you don't memorize a list in a book. No, no, no. You listen to real English, and when you hear a new word, you write it down. Or when you're reading a storybook and you see a new word, you write it down. But do not just write down that word. You want to write down the whole phrase or sentence that it's in. All of it. So instead of saying hate, and you just write down hate, you would write down John hates ice cream. You write down the whole phrase. Why do we do this? What's the power of phrases? Well, phrases give you a lot of information, much more information. Number one, phrases are easier to remember because they have meaning. They have a kind of a picture, a story, especially when you get them from something that you're reading or listening to. You'll remember it. John hates ice cream. You remember the whole story. You remember who John is. You remember that he had ice cream, and then you remember he hated it. He didn't like it. Right? So you have all these extra pieces of information. All this extra information helps you remember the meaning of the phrase and the meaning of that word. So it helps your memory. Much easier to remember. Number two, there's a bonus. When you learn phrases, you are learning grammar also. You're not only learning an individual word, you're learning grammar. You're learning how to use that word correctly. You don't need to think about the grammar. You don't need to know the rules. It's automatic. This is another way that native speakers learn English grammar. Because when we're children, we learn with phrases. We learn groups of words, not just one word by one word by one word. Word by word is slow and it doesn't help. And you don't learn any grammar. But when you learn a whole phrase, you write down the phrase, you're getting extra information. Maybe you don't know it, but you are. For example, John hates ice cream. Just that word, that S on the end, hates, right? John hates. Well, you know from grammar study that you're making the subject and the verb agree. But you don't need to think about that. Just write down the phrase, John hates ice cream, and study it and review it. Always learn the phrase, not just that word. And so in the future, whenever you say, he hates ice cream, she hates ice cream, you will add that S, the S, right? Because that's how you learned it. You learned it correctly. You learned it from a phrase. On the other hand, if you learn it from a textbook, you just learn the word hate, it means does not like, and you only learn that form, hate, 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 and you study it, you study it, you study it, you memorize it. That's when you start making mistakes, because you learned it only this one way. You didn't learn it with other words. So sometimes you'll say, he hate ice cream. You'll forget the S, because you never learned it correctly in a sentence, in a phrase. So, this is a very simple rule, our last rule in the course. Very, very important. Every time you find a new word, always, always, always write the phrase or the sentence. When you review that word again, when you study it again, always, always, always study the entire phrase or sentence. Never study just the word. Always the whole phrase. Do this every time, your grammar will begin to improve. It'll improve much faster. And you'll remember the vocabulary faster and more easily, and you will use that vocabulary more quickly. So you get a lot of great benefits. A lot of great stuff happens when you learn phrases instead of words. So phrases, phrases, phrases. Learn them. I hope you enjoyed rule number 1. Use this rule. Now your homework is to get a little phrase notebook. So when you find new English vocabulary in a lesson, in something you're listening to, in a book, in an article, write down the phrase, not just one word. Write down the entire whole phrase that you find, and then review that phrase again and again each day. And you will create a notebook full of phrases, full of sentences, not individual words, never an individual word.